Good morning. Today is Friday, September 11th, 2015. First, quick shout out to anybody and everyone who's lost anybody on September 11th. Thoughts and prayers go out to you and to your family and your friends. Today is a sad day in history, 14 years ago, as we all know. I want to talk briefly about the Trump factor and why Donald Trump is leading so far in the polls. Listen to Megyn Kelly real quick, and this is from the first Fox debate for the GOP.
One of the things people love about you is you speak your mind and you don't use a politician's filter. However, that is not without its downsides, in particular when it comes to women. You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account
Only Rosie O'Donnell.
So Donald Trump is just creaming his opposition from everybody from Ben Carson, who's actually starting to creep up, but also, Carly Fiorina, and the whole slew of incumbent politicians that are governors and senators like Huckabee and Jeb Bush. So what's going on, and why is America taking to Donald Trump so well? Now, the talking heads and the pundits in Washington just can't figure out what the Trump factor really is. It's going to come down to something very similar to why Howard Stern became as popular as he did. And keep in mind that the people that listened and put Howard Stern as the #1 radio personality for over about, two and a half, 3 decades now, these are the same people that are looking at Donald Trump. Here's a scene from the movie Private Parts as to why people listen, including those that don't like him.
The average Howard Stern fan listens for, are you ready for this? An hour and 20 minutes. How can that be? Answer most commonly given, I want to see what he'll say next. All right, okay, fine, but what about the people who hate Stern? Good point. The average Stern hater listens for 2.5 hours a day. Look, but if they hate him, why do they listen? Most common answer, I want to see what he'll say next.
So I apologize for the volume. That's just on the video that I used.
The average radio listener listens
But
for 18 minutes. The average Howard Stern fan listens for, are you ready for this? An hour and 20 minutes.
so if you missed the first part, the average radio listener listens for 18 minutes. The average Howard Stern listener listens for an hour and 20 minutes. So you understand, Howard Stern was saying and speaking what that generation wanted to hear. And even those that didn't want to hear it still listened. Why? They wanted to see what he'll say next. Is that much different than Mr. Trump? It's the same generation, basically, that put Howard Stern into his popularity position. So again, we're looking at a figurehead that a generation, and I think it's the Generation Xers, forgive me if I'm off on that, but I believe it's the Generation Xers, or XYs, or whatever they were called, or the Millennials. But they were that group, born around 1965 to 1975, that group, they're all in positions at this current time of influence, of financial power in a lot of cases. Many are professionals that you go to, physicians, lawyers, chiropractors, architects, engineers, the gamut, including all the trades. So, your heating, air conditioning specialists, anybody, electricians, plumbers, all those guys, they're all listening to Donald Trump. He is speaking what is on the minds of most Americans, even though he knows he's politically incorrect. He doesn't care. And guess what? Neither does the rest of the country at this current time that's listening. And if they do care, guess what? They're still listening. That's why his ratings are up. His ratings will continue to go up so long as he keeps speaking what's on the general population's mind. And the general population is the same population that used to, or still does, listen to guys like Howard Stern. So that, I believe, is the Trump factor. And I believe, if I'm I'm usually pretty right about this, I believe Trump will get to at least the top 3. And I don't see anybody really strong enough at this point to overtake him for the Republican ticket. Now, I could be dead wrong. Chris Christie could shoot up in the polls. Chris Christie is another strong personality, and he actually answers questions very well under the gun. And Carly Fiorina is another candidate. She has a rocky past, maybe with Hewlett-Packard, but I think people can look past that at this point. And the only incumbent candidate I could possibly see, would be Ted Cruz. I don't know that he'll make it as far, but he may. So those are people to look for in the Republican side. As far as Democratic side goes, they don't have a prayer. Hillary Clinton is just impossibly embedded with the email scandal. That's only getting worse. Trey Gowdy is going to be interviewing her on October 22nd under subpoena, under oath. She has to testify. So there's a lot of things going on that I could be doing tons of videos on, but the information is just too scattered right now, too fractured for me to even put out a video, because I don't like putting out videos that are not factual. So I'm not going to put out a hypothetical at this point. But I wanted to talk about the Trump factor, because I think it's important why people are just gravitating towards Mr. Trump. So that's my take on it. I'd love to hear your comments and see what you guys think. So have a good one. And again, anybody that's mourning on this day of September 11th, I do have my thoughts and prayers going out to you, and I'm sure everybody else does as well. So be safe, be well.
In 2016, the US electorate will go to the voting booths and choose between what will likely be Hillary Clinton and a yet unknown GOP presidential candidate. After 8 years of rule under Barack Obama, a man who seems to enjoy playing golf a little bit too much, and as well as telling conservatives and Christians how to live their lives, the GOP has an amazing opportunity to take back the White House and push Hillary Clinton out. The thing is, though, I'm beginning to think that this won't actually happen. The more and the more I see of the GOP candidates, the more I think that voters may well actually turn to the flip-flopping and the useless Hillary Clinton, because A, she's a woman, and that's some kind of big progressive deal, like Barack Obama being the first black president, and B, the GOP candidate is even more useless. I regularly say that America can learn a lot from Britain's mistakes, and it's not just when it comes to Islamization. Americans can learn from the failed tactics of British political parties, even in recent elections. The United Kingdom Independence Party fielded more candidates than they had ever done before in 2015, this year, blowing millions on a thoroughly professional and great campaign. But despite this, and despite winning the 2014 European elections the year before, UKIP lost one of its 2 MPs in the general election. I believe that UKIP's problem was not just the first past the post system working against them, but because, in fact, they attempted to attract the wrong voters. Nigel Farage constantly tried to convince the media that he wasn't racist. He was constantly defending himself, and even had some kind of ridiculous stunt where he embraced people of a huge range of different backgrounds on stage, gathering them all together, and it was the most elaborate declaration of "some of my best friends are black" that I've ever seen in my life. Nigel Farage begged for the vote from the multiculturalists, and that's pointless because the multiculturalists would never, ever vote for him. And then, in doing this, he ignored the white working class folk who were affected by multiculturalism and affected by mass immigration. He ignored a significant proportion of the 33% of British people who didn't vote. That's 15 million people. And then there's Ed Miliband, who led the Labour Party to a disastrous defeat. So he gave the Conservative Party a workable majority and he allowed them to form a government, unfortunately for us. There are lots more moving parts, but ultimately it seemed to me that Ed Miliband wasn't clear enough about what he actually wanted to do, despite writing it in this massive stone thing that was completely embarrassing. He offered no radical change at all, and he simply didn't inspire anyone. That, and he's a bumbling freak. I'm seeing the same things happening with the Republican Party today. Now, the only reason that the erratic and egotistical Donald Trump is doing so well in the polls right now is because he's got clear goals. He says he wants to make America rich, and he says he wants to stop illegal immigration. Great stuff. But would I trust him to be president? Probably not, but that's neither here nor there. Trump's rise to the top of the polls at the moment, 31st of July, I might add, has been greeted by countless Republicans screaming bloody murder and despairing at how many voters in the GOP and beyond seem to be attracted to him. But really, it's not Trump that's the problem. The problem is that the so-called serious candidates are not inspiring, like Ed Miliband, or they're trying to attract the wrong voters, like Nigel Farage. So let's take Jeb Bush, for instance, the so-called conservative, who claimed that Donald Trump's comments about immigration actually hurt him. Give me a break, this man is trying to run for presidency as a conservative candidate. In order to actually conserve a culture, to preserve a civilization, a people and a values, borders are necessary. What conservative Jeb Bush doesn't get, well, he doesn't get it at all. And by pandering to the vote of the bleeding heart liberals, he's just going to fail. But even if it works, it just means that a Democrat in disguise will take the White House. I was pleased to see, however, that Rand Paul, the libertarian-ish candidate, openly said that he'd like to stop immigration from Muslim countries. But coming from a man who just a couple of years ago supported a path to citizenship for illegals, I'd probably take that with a big pinch of salt. A great policy though it is, stopping immigration and stopping Muslim immigration is only one piece in a huge jigsaw puzzle that depicts the destruction of a civilization. Immigration from Mexico needs to stop. The Marxist-controlled institutions must be smashed, and the creeping Sharia that's already within the US needs to be stopped now. When I was at CPAC 2015, I saw candidate after candidate talk about the threat of ISIS, Rand Paul included. This is another serious problem with all candidates in the Republican Party. Not one of these Republican candidates is talking about the threat from within. Perhaps this is because they don't realise it's happening yet, or perhaps they just think the actual threat of ISIS is bigger, but they only really need to look over the pond and see how Islamic grooming gangs are raping and killing thousands of innocent white and Sikh girls. They need to look at how Sharia courts have created a parallel system of justice, how more than half of Muslim men and women are on benefits in the UK, and how Britain is creating and exporting terrorists who are terrorising the whole world, and they're coming from us. These problems will come to the United States, make no mistake, and it's time that the GOP voters, the activists, and the leaders all started talking about the issues that are actually going to affect the country in the coming years. Combine this with a forward-looking position, and combine that with the straight-talking attitude of Donald Trump, and dedication to the voters who will actually support you and not the ones who won't vote for you, and you've got a winning candidate on your hands. In short, my message is that Republican candidates need to pull their socks up. That is, if they're going to beat Donald Trump. It's no use whining about it. Offer a vision of hope for your people, not for the multiculturalists and the Democrats. And you'll win. You will win. Discuss the serious threat of multiculturalism in Islam, and on top of that, you'll lay the foundations for a thriving, peaceful nation in the future. My message is to learn from Britain's mistakes, and for God's sake, stop pandering to Marxists.